o'clock. So we're going to get started here. I just wanted to note for folks that are joining us this afternoon, we are going to be recording this meeting just so we're able to post it on the town's website for people that aren't able to join us for this session. So just wanted to make everyone aware of that. So good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. My name is Matthew Bachler. I am the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the town of Swanzey. And just to note too, this is the first of two public informational sessions we're holding today. We'll also be doing an in-person presentation this evening with the Board of Selectmen at 6 p.m. You're more than welcome to join us at that in-person session as well. In attendance today, I have Bob Hayden and Emily Manns from Standard Power and Patrick Roche from Good Energy. Standard Power and Good Energy is the consultant team that's been working with our Community Power Committee here in town and developing the Swanzey Community Power Program. So I just have a few introductory comments to get us started here. And then I'm going to be turning it over to Bob Hayden and Patrick Roche just in a minute here. So just wanted to provide some context before we get started. So the Swanzey Board of Selectmen created a Community Power Committee back in March of 2021. The role of that committee is to advise and make recommendations to the Board of Selectmen about creating an electric aggregation program for the town of Swanzey. And the select board gave the committee a goal of coming up with a community power plan that could be considered by voters at our next town meeting, which would be in March of 2022. The committee has been meeting on a monthly basis since April, sometimes twice a month. This is a group made up of 5 town residents. A few of them are here with us this afternoon. And they've been putting a lot of time into developing the community power plan. They selected Standard Power and Good Energy as the consultant team to help the committee and the town in this process, and have just been putting in a lot of time. I really appreciate the work they've been doing on this. And I kind of serve as the administrative staff person helping out the committee in this process. So my contact information is on the screen here. If you have any questions about community power, you can always reach out to me at any point, and I'm happy to help respond to any questions. Kind of early on in the process, the committee worked on a vision statement for themselves just to kind of guide this process. And I have that vision statement on the screen here. So the vision for Swanzey Community Power is to launch a timely community power program that provides community members with attractive choices and substantially enhanced renewable energy options at competitive prices. And so, as I said, one of the first steps for the committee was to select a consultant to kind of assist us in this process. And Standard Power and Good Energy have been helping us with working through the legal requirements of community power, helping us with marketing, promoting the community survey that we recently completed in the last month here, and developing the community power plan. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob and Patrick to walk us through a presentation. So I'll turn it over to you guys. Thank you.
That sounds great. Thank you very much. This is Patrick. I'll kick it off and then we'll get it over to Bob in a little bit. So we're going to just describe kind of the basics. What is community power? Set the stage for everyone, and then get into the goals and the benefits. Why one would pursue community power? What could be the possibilities with it, and also what would it be like for a participant in community power once the program is up and running. Then we'll talk about the results of the survey that we did. And we'll just tell you too a little bit about our team and what we're going to be helping the town with, and then kind of outline where the next steps are and where we go from here. And then we'll take questions. So we'll start off on the next slide with what is community power? So if you look at your electric bill today, you'll see there's two main sections. There's a supply section and a delivery section. So supply are the actual electrons, that are coming over the wires. And we in New Hampshire, it's a deregulated state, so you have the choice over what electricity you are supplied with. The delivery portion, which is the poles and the wires that get the power to you, that is always going to be the utility. So there's no choice there. And then that all comes to you on a single bill. So even if you change your electricity supplier, you're still getting one single bill from the utility, Eversource. So what we're talking about with community power is the town being able to make a choice about the default electricity supply for most of the residents and businesses in town. Some of you out there may have already made a choice about who your supplier is, but by and large, most residential customers and small business customers have not, and they're on the default that just comes from Eversource. So this is about sort of the community really taking local control over the cost and the content of the power supply. And this is something that is pretty common in a number of other states. In Massachusetts, it's already up and running, as well as a number of other states. So it's new to New Hampshire, but very well established around the country. And then if you go to the next slide, we'll talk kind of about those goals. So, when a community does take control of their electricity supply like this, what are the benefits? What can you do with it? So really what we're kind of talking about is bringing the benefits of the competitive market to the residential and small business customers. And most of the large electricity users are already, they've already selected their own supplier. That often includes the town accounts as well, because they have the scale, they can command good terms and conditions. But for most individuals and small businesses, they really can't. So by community power, we get to bundle everyone together and actually get this buying power to be able to kind of act like a large electricity buyer. And so we can use that to go for competitive rates that hopefully have savings, as well as more stable rates. We'll talk about that. We can support clean energy and use cleaner energy if we want, and we can just add new choices on top of the existing choices today. So I'll walk through each of these briefly, and the next slide goes into the competitive pricing. So there are two elements that really impact why your community power program will be able to get competitive pricing. Because you might think, well, the utility they must have the most buying power. So how could we possibly have buying power to match them? And the real big advantages of your community power program will be around market timing, as well as the buying power. So one of the things, the utilities' hands are relatively tied in terms of when they go out to market for power and how long they can contract for. So they really can't avoid bad market conditions, and they can't lock in during good market conditions. And the big difference with community power is we have complete flexibility around that. And the other thing is that by aggregating all of the accounts in town, we do achieve the scale that does put us out there with a large electricity buyer. And as part of the plan, there can even be the possibility of going out to bid with other communities for even more scale. So that's where the competitive pricing comes in. Then the next slide talks about price stability. So the utilities default service supply rate, as you may know, changes price about every 6 months. And that often sort of spikes up in the winter, down in the summer. And actually right now, the regional and global energy markets are going through a massive spike. And so we'll probably see that reflected in default service rates soon. And so with community power, we can contract for a fixed rate for a year, 2 years, 3 years, and have a rate that stays fixed throughout all these variable time periods. And that's going to be a benefit that's probably even more important as we see climate change bring increased volatility and extreme weather events that are disrupting the energy supply chain. And then renewable energy is next. And this is where, yeah, you can choose. You have to have at least the state mandated minimum renewable energy to meet the renewable portfolio standard. But we can go higher if we want. We can include more renewable energy, and we can do that. We can choose where those sources come from. We can try to keep it as local as possible if we want, or from within the region. So that's a big option that we have to explore. And then the next slide, I think, talks about just expanded consumer choice. So when we roll out this program, the same options that exist today will still be there. You could stay with Eversource's default service if you want for your electricity supply. And then any of the other third-party offers that are out there today, those will still be there. So you could still choose those if you wanted in the future. But what we will be adding, if you click, is a series of options from the town through the community power program. So there will be a standard product that is sort of the default product, but then we can also have optional products. So we might have some, usually it varies how much renewable energy is in the products. That's one of the big differences. And then of course they have different prices. So we're really expanding the total number of options. And these new options are ones that will be town vetted and essentially kind of backed by the town in the sense of someone who's actually looking at, are these good terms and conditions for you? Are they going to be protecting you as a consumer? And then finally, on the next slide, we have kind of a bunch of other benefits that will come with these programs. Hopefully, this community power is going to be a program that once Swanzey starts it, lasts a very, very long time. And so we're bringing that local control. We're adding consumer protection, as we kind of just talked about, because which is not really there currently with those third-party offers that many of you may have received in the mail or over the phone. But then we'll also be able to really, I think, engage in a good energy planning process. Where does Swanzey want to go by 2030 and beyond? And we can use community power as the tool to implement those plans. And then also over time, the program can evolve and we can hopefully roll out innovative local programs that might generate funding to possibly support energy efficiency or clean energy projects in the community. And I think there's some really exciting opportunities there. And then finally, education and awareness, essentially just building capacity to understand energy bills, particularly electricity side of things, and help the community become sort of smarter and more, I think, capable consumers of electricity. So there's, I think, long-term, there's a lot of these benefits as well. So now I think I'll turn it over to Bob to kind of describe what it's like for a participant.
Thank you, Patrick. And I'd like to thank Matthew one more time for the great work that not only he, but the Community Power Committee has already done in surveying the community, putting together a great team, and starting to move forward on this great project. And I also would like to take one step back to consumer protections with a little anecdotal story. I recently got a mailer from a third-party supplier regarding my home electricity. And I know that many of my friends, clients, and business folks that I know get these all the time, and they often call me about them. And this was a pretty nice looking card. It looked really good. It said they would send me a credit card or a gift card for $100 if I switched to them. So I called them the next day and said, that's a great offer. $100 is really nice. Everybody can use $100. But what's the price of the electricity? What's the actual price of the supply? And they said, oh, 12.4 cents. That's huge in comparison to what we're paying now. We're paying 8.8 cents right now. So for it to be up almost 4 cents is ridiculous. And those are the kind of predatory things that happen to our friends and neighbors on a regular basis. Some people sniff them right out and throw the card away, but other people get caught in those predatory traps that are expensive and inappropriate. So anyway, some community power basics. Every resident is eligible to participate, and folks who are unserved or who are on the utility default service rate, the Eversource regular electricity rate, are eligible immediately to participate. They can enjoy a competitive price, and we expect to include more renewables into the product. As Patrick mentioned, the RPS starts with 20% renewable products. But the expectation is that some of the community will want to have greater participation in renewable energy. There's an indication that a pretty good handful of folks will want to go as high as 100% renewable. Optional products might include encouraging New Hampshire Saves, which is an efficiency program through your utility Eversource that's underutilized and usually ends up with excess funding at the end of the year. So if we can participate in that, we can participate in reducing our electricity load across the community, which often is the best savings we can have. The best electricity you can use or not use is what you don't have to buy, and efficiency helps you there. Next slide, please. So there's no cost to the community on this, and that's important. Right now, Matthew is participating, so there's a soft cost in his time, and he's a great team member, so that there is that soft cost, but there's no penalty or fee to join or to cancel or to rejoin the program. So all of those things are penalty free. There's no ability for this program to collect any fees outside of the small fee we charge on the electricity that's actually delivered. So that's how we're compensated. This program will have no effect on low-income discounts that some folks may have through the utility or net metering. We may even decide, as in the plan, to enhance some of these benefits. And I think one of the most important things to me about the program in general, or the Community Power Program, is that we get to do community outreach. We get to educate people more on energy issues. And I think, as Patrick mentioned earlier, right now, not only the national market, but the international market on energy in general is really quite crazy. We're seeing prices on natural gas that are 3 times what they were 18 months ago. That's a primary driver in the cost of electricity because much of our power is made through natural gas generation. So having an opportunity and a mechanism for community members to learn more about energy in general, but specifically in the success of their plan, suggests that we'll get better community engagement over time through education. And then now we're kind of at the survey that we did do. We helped develop it, but largely Matthew has implemented this, and we've collected a great amount of data. So if we can go on to that, we'll take a little conversation about that. Starting on September 17th, we've received 80 online responses and 16 paper responses from the Monadnock shopper. We may end up with a couple more, but that's a great start. That's awesome. The community really will enjoy having a voice in how we develop this program. So here are some of the things that folks responded about. 79% of the community said they wanted to lower energy bills. So clearly that's the strongest focus for us at the starting point of this plan. 56% like the idea of local control, having a say in what the power stack or what the electricity delivered actually looks like. 55% believe in increased renewables. My favorite came in at 41%, consumer protection. New electricity choices, local jobs, and increased knowledge. Well, I think for me, I always like to see increased renewables, consumer protections, and increased knowledge. Local jobs is pretty darn important too, and we'll look at ways to include that in our program any way possible over time. Next. So here's what we see the makeup of our power stack looking like based on that survey. So, this is an important number because it indicates where we should be. 15% of folks said no more renewables, the 20% is enough. 9% said they would like to have 100% renewables. So there's quite a range in opinion, Some folks said 16% that they'd like a little more renewable energy and are willing to pay a little more. And then 57% say they'd like to pay about the same. So this is the range of choices we'll have in the plan. The assumption is that the majority of the plan will be satisfied by folks who do nothing. So that's probably the options that says we'll have extra renewable energy if I can still pay the same as I do today. So that will be the default option in the plan we submit to the community. Next. So our team, Standard Power has been working with the town of Swanzey since 2013 as part of a buying group for electricity. That group, or there's actually 3 groups now, includes 65 other towns and school districts. Swanzey's also participated in a renewable program that Standard Power administers of net metered or group net metered local hydro facilities. So we've been working together for a long time. We've provided the town with not only some very significant savings from the cost of electricity, but also substantive reimbursements from the hydroelectric group net metering program. In some communities, we help not only integrate this hydro program, but whatever solar programs they already have, and the development and purchase of renewable energy credits. So some communities have already made some pretty cool commitments to a renewable energy future. Patrick, you want to pick it up with good energy?
Yeah, sure. Just a little bit about us. We're very excited to partner with Standard Power here in New Hampshire. Our experience is really deeply in community power, but in other states, many in the New England region. So we've got 40 active programs with cities and towns in Massachusetts. We are in the process of launching a buying group in Rhode Island, including the city of Providence. And that's important because all these states are part of our regional electricity grid. And so energy is traded sort of across state boundaries within our New England regional grid. And so that sort of experience is very important because it's quite universal. And so partnering up with Standard Power, though, who has New Hampshire-based experience, is just a great combination. So we've got a long track record of delivering savings to our communities, and we're looking forward to doing that here in Swanzey. So I think the next slide, we could just get a couple more here. So just wanted to really zoom out for people to understand the way we're looking at implementing this community power program is one that is also used in all these other active programs that I talked about that we have run, as well as in a bunch of other states across the country where this is active. So you've got Illinois, Ohio, Massachusetts, New Jersey, New York, Rhode Island. And the idea here is that we're going to be able to provide a stable and competitive rate, fixed rate, that, as Bob said, has no cost to the municipal budget. All the costs are recovered in the supply rate. And that the supplier that we choose is the one who retains all the risk. So when there are these wild swings in the wholesale energy markets, like we talked about, or there's another global pandemic which shuts down half the economy and causes big changes to electricity supply and demand, the municipality isn't exposed to any of that. We're working with some of the largest national suppliers that have the sort of geographic and financial wherewithal and diversity to weather these kind of storms. So that's what we're going to be doing to actually implement this. It's a really risk-free approach for the municipality. And then we can kind of talk about just where we are now today and what the next steps would be. So we already sort of did the get started, which is you've appointed a community power committee, which the law requires, and then you've engaged with Good Energy and Standard Power as your consultant team. So now we're into the stage of developing the community power plan and getting public input. So that's part of what we're doing today and with the survey. So based on on the input here, we're going to be developing a community power plan, and it's going to identify how we'll meet all of the different statutory obligations we have. And one of the biggest things you'll see in that is our plan for what kind of electricity options we'll offer. And as Bob said, that survey will really, really influence that. And it seems like so far there's a lot of support for a product. One of those products has to be our default, our standard. And there seems like there's a lot of support for that to be competitively priced with, against the utility, but also have a little renewable energy. So hopefully we pay about the same or have some savings. So that's one of the things you'll see is the kind of product options we're envisioning. And then you'll also see another big piece of that is our education and outreach plan, how we're going to notify the community about this program. And that is a really important piece of this, because if you are currently served by the utility, if you haven't chosen your own supplier, you're eligible to be automatically enrolled when the program launches. So we want to make sure before the program launches, we give you as many opportunities as possible to be aware of this program. And if you don't want to participate, that's fine, and you can select not to participate. So we'll be identifying how we're going to do that. So once we have this draft plan, then we'll be ready. Once we feel like we've got the right input and the Community Power Committee is on board with it, then we'll move to town meeting in the spring and have the town vote on that. And if that is successful, then we can move to the regulatory phase, where the New Hampshire Public Utilities Commission will look at it. And based on an amendment to the law that passed this summer, we may even be able to submit the.
Yesterday.
Oh, you did, okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Oh.
Hi,
Barbara, I think we have a little, I think you're, yeah, thanks. So we may even be able to submit that plan ahead of time to the Public Utilities Commission to get their feedback on it before town meeting. But either way, we'll need to get their approval. And then once we do have their approval, then and town meeting approval, then we'll be looking at when can we go out to bid for an electricity supply. So that's sort of number 6 there. And again, market timing is one of our main advantages. So we may be able to go out for electricity supply right after we get approval, or we may want to wait a few months to be strategic about getting the best price that we can. But once we do secure an electricity supply, and the town's never under any obligation to choose an electricity supply, but once we do find one that meets the town's goals, then we will kick off that whole education and outreach process. And that's going to include meetings, virtual and in person. It's going to include mailers. Everyone who's eligible will get a mailer explaining exactly what's going to happen and informing them of all of their rights in terms of if they want to participate or not participate. And that will happen at least a month before the program launches, so that you'll have plenty of time to consider your options. And then we'll get to the launch, which is number 8, and we'll enroll everyone who's going to be enrolled. And if you are enrolled, once the program's up and running, you can still choose to leave at any time, as Bob mentioned, or if you're not enrolled initially because you didn't want to participate, you can join later. And then we're into managing and monitoring, where, and again, this is all services that Good Energy and Standard Power are doing. We're going to be doing the customer support. We're going to be monitoring the supplier. We're going to be helping you do outreach and education campaigns and kind of plan ahead. So we'll be there with you kind of the whole way to help implement this. And that's sort of what we're looking forward to in terms of our next steps.
So thank you, Bob and Patrick. That was great presentation. I think at this point we've arrived at the questions period of the presentation. So if any members of the public have any questions about community power, I know we went over a lot of information there. So Patrick and Bob are here to respond to questions. I can jump into as needed. And I just wanted to note too that we're doing these public informational sessions today to get feedback from the public to help us develop the community power plan. But there will be additional public meetings before a plan would be considered at town meeting. We are required to hold public hearings once a kind of a final draft of the plan is completed. So there will be ample opportunity to kind of further on. We're thinking in late fall, early winter, when we hold those public hearings for the public to review the full draft of the plan, attend public meetings, provide additional feedback before the final version of the plan goes to the voters next spring.
Matthew, I'd like to add one thing that I may have missed in the presentation.
Please go ahead, Bob.
So this plan that we start with is just that. It's a starting point. Right now, we work within a set of rules that are defined by the laws that are made by our legislators and the rules that are made by the PUC/Energy Department. And they're codified into a document called the utility tariff. That's the rule book that Eversource uses to work with folks like us and programs like this. And that rule book is a changing document every year as rules and laws change. Just like a community power plan is a living document also. What we do and how we do it will evolve over time. And not only will we be there to participate in that evolution, but will be part of your voice in the legislative process for the evolution of community power as it benefits and is implemented in the town of Swanzey. So for the Energy Committee or the Community Power Committee, they may choose to participate in the legislative process, but really it's kind of a rallying cry to all citizens who want their voice heard in that process to help with whatever the evolution of these programs are here in New Hampshire and specifically for the town of Swanzey. So we look forward to being your voice, but we would like to have you participate in those things too as we move forward.
Great, thanks, Bob.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for questions, I might just add a little bit more about the renewable energy angle. I think that many of the offers you might see out there, or people might be familiar with, getting in the mail may promise 100% renewable energy for very competitive rates, or it seem like competitive rates. And oftentimes that renewable energy it's sourced from renewable energy certificates that are coming from Texas or the Midwest, and that power can't actually get to our grid. And your purchases also really aren't helping to spur the growth of additional renewable energy. And so one of the kind of philosophies we have is helping communities, make sure we're purchasing the clean energy that's actually on our grid, and ideally as local as possible. And that's really kind of a community decision. And then also doing that in a way that helps to spur additional growth of renewable energy, so that we're hoping to expand the total pie of renewable energy that is out there. And ideally supporting it as locally as possible, where we can kind of support some of those local jobs and the broader clean energy economy that's here in New Hampshire.
Well, I'm not hearing any questions, which I think means Bob and Patrick did a fantastic job at covering a very complex topic.
Well, that is encouraging, and hopefully people will ruminate on this, and more questions will come out. So we will be available as questions come up. And
as I mentioned too, yeah, if anyone has questions during the process, feel free to email me directly. And if I don't have the answer, I can reach out to Patrick and Bob and get you the answer. So I know it's a lot a lot that we've covered, and so you may come up with questions kind of later on. Again, I'm here as a resource at the town, kind of as a direct contact to help you get any questions answered.
Yeah, I would expand that offer to really anything energy in the New England area. We're pretty well versed in that stuff, and we'd be happy to provide education individually to anybody who wants to chat about it. I'm actually working with a college student from Keene State this afternoon before the evening presentation, who had a bunch of questions through the Community Power Program portal in the Keene website. So we'll be chatting with her a little bit. Maybe we'll end up with supporting some of her coursework.
Excellent. And I think this is also a good time, if this is interesting, this topic is interesting to you, it's a good time to pull out your electricity bill and check that supply section to see who your supplier is. Identify, is it just Eversource? Okay, then you're going to be one of the people, who'd be eligible for the program, automatically when it rolls out. You might be signed up with a competitive supplier. If you are, you might want to check their rate, because sometimes people forget and they're now in a much higher rate than they should be. But also, if you are with a competitive supplier, make sure you understand what your cancellation provisions are when that contract ends, because if you're interested in getting into this program when it does launch, you'll want to make sure that you're not going to be hit by any cancellation fees or something if you leave your current supplier early. So again, it would only apply to someone who's chosen a different supplier already. But it's a good time to pull out the bill and see who your supplier is.
Good point, Patrick. So if there aren't any questions, I'll let our presenters sign off and let everyone enjoy the beautiful afternoon out there. And as I said, we have another informational session at 6. So pass that along to friends or neighbors in case they might be interested in attending that evening session. But with that, I wanted to say thank you to Bob and Patrick and Emily. And
thank you to you also, Matthew. It's a pleasure working with you.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.